When she felt inspired to write 580 of her Facebook friends a handwritten letter, it turned into an epic 18-month journey. And what she learned? Well, staggering. You'll hear about it today on The BraveHearted Woman. Hey everybody, this is Dawn Damon, and this is my show, The BraveHearted Woman. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, each week I bring important topics for women just like you to help you live with courage and confidence and bold vision for your future. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm always giving out free resources that empower you. So you ready? Come on, let's get brave. Hey, my guest today is award-winning author, a keynote speaker, a sports journalist, and a humorist. And when I say that, I mean it. I have listened to her book on Audible. She's hilarious. And she's basically an all-around spreader of hope and joy. Please welcome my guest today, Amy Daughters. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. We've been so excited to have you here. You and I talked before the program that we are going to wear our cool glasses today. So here we are, two sisters, two cool glasses, and a couple of brave stories. And I can't wait to hear about your story. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm I'm an author and a freelance writer. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm just another skinny hot girl trying to make my way, through the day. So.
Absolutely. And you are a hot girl and you are skinny, at least from this angle here. You look amazing. So, and listen, skinny is an attitude, so is sexy. So that's it. We're enjoying our midlife. So I love asking everybody when they come on the program to tell me about their brave story. We kind of just did it a little bit in the teaser here, but tell me about your brave story in life. You've probably had more than one.
Right. But the story that I've been entrusted with, what you said in our pre-talk or the pre-part of this call, but I was basically just minding my own business. That's the way I like to tell the story. I was a freelance writer. I had written one book and I was just doing life. And I got on Facebook one day and I always had this girl's name in my head. Her name was Dana, and I'd met her at a summer camp in 1986. And we spent like 6 weeks together, and we both were very loud and thought we were very hilarious. And so that really resonated, but we had no contact for 30 years. But I was always like, oh, I wonder what happened to Dana. And so I get on Facebook one day, it's like 2014. I type her name in. There she is, Dana. Oh my gosh, I found her. And since it didn't mean anything, I friended her because, we were just going to be online. Who cares? And so I friend request her. She accepts. And then I do the next obvious thing is I stalk her little page. And I'm like, oh, her hair
Of
changed.
course.
Now she doesn't have a perm and like she got blonde hair and it's straight. Like what happened, Keratin? Oh my gosh, this is a great story. And then I realized that she has overachieved in the kid department. She has 5 kids. And the youngest one is her only boy. And his name is Parker. And right away, I figure out this kid is at St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee, and he has cancer. And so if he's there, he's probably fighting for his life. So the first part of this engagement was, as a mom, as a human being, I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I want to follow along with the story. But I could tell right away, Dawn, that I was kind of overfeeling it. And then she asked the golden question. She said, please pray for us. I'm kind of a prayer. That was always like my background gig. And I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll start praying for these people. And it was kind of like I was drawn in a way that didn't make sense. Like we've all seen prayer requests on Facebook or social media. And, I'm pretty good at it, but then it drops off. But these people, I just could not get out of the story. So I prayed. She was really honest on Facebook, really opened up. Had that same big personality. So he goes eventually into remission. So I'm relieved. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. So it kind of goes on the back burner of my prayer life, of my consciousness. But she posts about football, and football's my thing. She went to LSU. So I'm following along with that. And then at the end of the next year, I could tell something was different. And she got back on Facebook and said, guys, look, Parker has relapsed. We're going back to Memphis.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, no. And then so she's like, we really need y'all to pray. So, and again, I had no contact with her. I didn't even put like on any of her posts, or I said nothing, which is hilarious. And so I immediately thought, okay, I'm going to start praying again. I'll put this on the front burner. But I sat at my desk. Like I said, I'm a writer. I sat on my desk and it was almost like a bolt of lightning from the heavens. I didn't ask anything. I didn't say anything. I just sat there. And it was like, you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start writing Dana and Parker letters and send them to the Ronald McDonald House in Memphis. And I know now that that was all God, but it was like I was so invested in this idea. And I hadn't written anyone a letter probably in 25 years. And I
Wow.
hadn't had any contact with Dana. I'd never met Parker. So I like to tell the story at different levels of like craziness. So there was like DEFCON 4, I'm going to write these people letters. And so I was so invested that I sat down the next morning and I literally got like a card out and it was like, Dear Dana and Parker. And I started writing them. And I'd write, I'm praying for you, I'm supporting you, all the stuff that you would normally write. And then I started saying, well, here's who I am and here's what I do, because I didn't really have anything to say. Well, about 8 to 10 weeks into this arrangement, it was all on my end of me sending these letters, I can tell again on Facebook that Dana's tone of her posts starts to shift. And then eventually it's her friends posting, and I can tell it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I go to church one morning, we come home, it's a Sunday, I get my phone out, and Dana posts this paragraph post, and it's like, Parker passed away this morning.
Oh,
He was
goodness.
he was only 15 years old.
Mm.
I mean, total devastation. And this had nothing to do with me, Dawn, and I got that. But after, reading this, I sat down, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Because I felt so called to write the letters.
Yeah.
And so I sent a condolence note and I was like, God, what do you want me to do? And then it was another like smaller bolt of lightning. And it was just pure like adrenaline and gut instinct. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep writing her letters. And so only this time, I don't even know where this girl lives, because I knew she lived in Louisiana, but you know how Facebook works. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really know where she lives.
Right.
I don't really know anything. So I kind of stalked her again, and I found out her husband had an office address. So I just crazily, DEFCON 3, start sending her letters to her husband's law office address. Like, ooh, crazy. And I knew the whole time I was doing it, like, you are nutso. This is outside the boundaries of normal behavior, but I couldn't stop myself. And so I just start writing her week after week after week. Dana, I'm praying for you. Dana, I'm sorry. Dana, I know I don't know what to say. And then Dana, guess what? My sister's crazy. Like, I started telling her stuff about my life. And then magically, about 5 months into this, I go to my mailbox, and I was living in Ohio at the time. I go to my mailbox and I pull out my mail. It's my birthday. And I'm kind of hoping for a birthday card, but that doesn't happen anymore. I pull out, and here in my hands is a 10-page handwritten letter from Dana. She
Oh,
had written me back. Just
wow.
amaze balls, and so I go in, and I hadn't really told anybody about any of this, so I didn't even really have anybody to text.
I got to interrupt you for 1 second, because you are
Sure.
gripping me with the story. I'm fighting tears, but the humor is wonderful. So thank you for the small whoops. Thank you for
Well,
the small reprieve with
oh
the
no,
DEFCON 3. But we got to just say this, like, when you get gripped with something like that, you are definitely on an assignment from God. Like, he has apprehended your soul, and it's your must. It's your divine
right.
must, right? You got to do this. It makes no
Well,
sense, but you
right,
got
and
to do it.
right. And people tell me all the time and hear the story like, oh my God, you're so wonderful. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I was not twirling around in a field of wheat saying, God, what do you want me to do in this beautiful white dress? I was wearing yoga pants from Target, and I was like eating a snack pack pudding, going, I'm not asking about anything. I'm just trying to watch Dallas on my iPad, And so it was like God just overtook me and was like, this is your mission in life. And no,
Yeah.
it makes no sense. Like you said, it was gripping. Like I'm still in the grips with these people.
Mm.
And so she writes me back. I sit down and read this letter, and she opens up about her grief, like right away. And I don't even know what to do with this. So, obviously I write her back. And then this kicks off this 2 year, we spent 2 years writing each other exclusively through the US mail. We didn't text each other. We didn't email each other. We didn't Facebook message each other. We just wrote each other letters. And I didn't ask her to write me. She didn't ask me. We've never asked each other for anything, but we started sharing on this level that made no sense. And the part that we're writing letters, it created this vacuum, because if I write you, Dawn, and you write me back, you have no idea when I opened that letter. You
Right.
have no idea when I read it. It doesn't tell you at the bottom that I read it. It takes all the pressure off of one replying, gives you all this time to think about what the other person said. Like you walk around and think about it. And then when you're writing about your life, you're looking out from the outside in. And when a person opens up in words like that, it is so intimate. It absolutely turned my life on its head. And I felt so profoundly close to this person who had shared to me, and I knew nothing about her. And the best part was, I didn't know if she was a Democrat or a Republican. I knew she believed in God because she asked for prayers, but I had no idea. Was she a Baptist? Was she a Methodist? Was she a Catholic? And I couldn't have cared less because all I knew is this girl, she needed the prayers. And also, she became my friend in the mail. She cared about my, like, she'd be like, I care about your mom and I care about your issues with your blah, blah, blah. She cared. And so that's all that mattered. And about 6 months into this whole thing, I sat back and I was like, if God can do this with this one random girl who got carroted in Louisiana, what else is out there on this list of absolutely random people from all these different points in my life? And I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? DEFCON 1, let's go. I'm gonna write all these people a handwritten letter. So I literally got an Excel spreadsheet, typed everyone's name into it. I cut out little pieces of paper and I took a box and I wrote on the top of it, this is about God, this is not about you, because that's kind of what I learned about from Dana. I shoved all the names in. I bought stationery. It said my name, your Facebook friend, and I sat down starting on day one and pulled somebody's name out. And I was like, oh God, now I've got to write this person a letter. And I journaled the whole thing. I never thought I'd finish. I did not mean to go on a meaningful journey. I did not mean to do anything really. It was just, I kind of just did what I knew I was supposed to do. I kept writing Dana and I wrote 580 Facebook friends a handwritten letter. And it absolutely just changed the entire trajectory, yes, of my life, but more importantly, of my heart.
Say more about that. That was a work in your heart that was being done. Wow. I mean, how was it changing? How was your heart changing? What was the transformation that was taking place?
Well, there were so many different levels to the change because, one of the first things was I realized, and we look at our list, it's so relatable. We look at our list of social media friends and we're like, oh, these are all people like randomly that I kind of thought that I remembered how I knew them. Well, first of all, just the simple act of, because if you're going to write somebody a letter, what are you even going to say? Well, first of all, I had to go. Let's say I went to high school with Dawn, with you know, and first of all, I had to identify that because there were so many people. I was like, oh, I think I went to high school with her. I was like, no, it was summer camp. No, we worked together. No, we danced at a wedding together. Because not because you're a bad human being, because it's too much. You can't sort that person out. But you had to zero in on that person to write them a letter. You had to go figure out who they were. So that was the first gift of the whole thing. So the first gift was I was like going to go unpack Dawn. Like what happened? Like, first of all, oh my gosh, she's doing this podcast about, you know, helping women flourish in midlife. She's helping people. She's inspiring people with these stories. She's probably impacting people she doesn't even know. So the first thing I'm going to say to you, Dawn, from high school, I'll be like, Dawn, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I can see how you would have done this, but you just got to know I'm looking from the outside in going, this is my friend. Dawn's a rock star. And then the second thing I'm going to do, because I got to find out something to say to you, I'm going to sit back naturally, not because I'm a great human being, just because I'm a person. I'm going to be like, oh, Dawn Damon. Oh, yeah, she was the one who, when that guy broke up with me, while I was standing by the payphone outside of the lunchroom, she was like, you know what, Amy? You're not going to let this define you. You're going to have better relationships. You're going to be fine. So, number two thing I'm going to do in my letter to Dawn, I'll be like, Dawn, I never said this to you, but I should have. Thank you. Because that advice is something I still think about, even though I don't connect it back or blah, 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 whatever. So I'm going to say those things to you. And so here is what's going to happen. You're not going to expect this letter, but you're going to go to your mailbox one day and you're going to open, before you even read the words, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're going to connect the dots of what I had to do to create this magical moment. I know this because it happened to me and happened to people on the other side of the letters. But you're going to hold this thing in your hand. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're going to be like, she had to sit down. She had to find paper. She had to find a pen. She had to get an envelope. She had to lick it. Where's my address? Oh my God, I need a stamp. Oh my gosh, I got to drive across Grand Rapids. Where's the post office? I have no idea because I forgot about all that. And you're going to hold it in your hand. So before you even read it, and it turned out to be meaningful because that was an ends to a mean, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I matter to another human being in 2018 or whatever. And it's going to blow the
Wow.
doors off.
Hmm.
And so friend by friend, letter by letter, boom, 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 boom. People's hearts were changed. And then they replied to me. But the thing is, so yes, the replies, my heart was so full. I realized I was connected to this amazing group of real life human beings that had real stories. And so all of a sudden, I didn't care that you were a Democrat and I was Republican. I'm not saying that's what you are, and I'm not identifying myself as such. I didn't care that you were a Baptist and I was a Muslim. I didn't care that you were this. I cared that your mother had been ill and you were struggling with that. And I didn't know it till I went and looked at your profile page. I cared that you took care of me in high school. I cared that you were a real human with a real experience. And so you think about what a profound revelation that is for a human
Yes.
being. And then I'm connected to all of these rock stars who showed up in my life that God put in my life at the right time. So then my grateful meter goes just right off the chart. And over again, I realized that if we connect individually in this connection that God gave us, if we rekindle this connection and remember, even if we don't continue on with this relationship, but me just remembering Dawn and multiplying that by several hundred, then all of a sudden, all the hope I was looking for is right there.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah,
who
so
cares about anything else?
hmm. Yeah. I can so hear the humility in your heart as you're talking, because you said at the very top of the spreadsheet you wrote, it's not about me. And, people might tend to think like, oh, you did this amazing thing. And yet I can hear the humility that you were really amazingly impacted by this. Was there a response? Did people respond to you? Did you get letters back? Did you start a movement? What happened?
Well, that's what, it's funny because movement is what I like to think about, like when I'm speaking. And I never would have thought that I would have, spoke about it or wrote a book about it. That was never my intention, anything. And that's what there is a the Dana who I'm best friends with now, who I'm in contact, who I talked with this morning, who knows I'm on your podcast right now. You
Oh,
know,
hi, Dana. We love you.
and she's the best friend I ever had, and God provided that as well. But yeah, absolutely, I'm on a mission to tell my story
Come
and
on.
then let God do the rest. But as far as responses, I'm kind of a numbers girl, so I think I heard back from like 78% of the people who I reached out to, mostly handwritten letter, but Facebook message or text, and the responses were so over the top gratifying, and the fact that
Mm.
people felt compelled to share with me on the same level that I shared with them. And, the most common response I got, though, and this just goes to, it just lends to what the power of lettering, not the power of me, not that I'm a writer, but over and over again, people told me, I'm going to save your letter in a special place for
Mhm.
the rest of my life.
Wow.
And whether
Whew.
people believe in God or not, that's God's love over and over again in
Yeah.
the mailbox, over and over and over
Mm,
again.
mm, 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 mm. That's so incredible. As you're talking, I'm thinking like, you're the hairdresser, you're the masseuse, you're that safe person that I open up my heart to and go, blah, because you just reached out and touched me. Just like when a hairdresser's doing your hair, or
Oh, yeah.
masseuse, they're touching your body, and there's this kind of this intimate connection because they're caring for you. You were caring for the soul, and you opened up people in an unassuming way where they're like, I don't really know this woman, but she just, first of all, she just affirmed me. She just then thanked me. She also told me how I inspired her, and she connected with me at a deep level. And I want to tell her about my life. I
Right.
think that's what Jesus did to people.
I mean, that's so humbling. I almost can't go on, but I think that's why it's inspired by that. It's not me. It's not about me. It's about connection. It's about God's love. And I will say that, back to Dana, what you just said is so powerful because letter writing is or note writing, it doesn't have to be a full letter. I have a lot to say about that, but it's so non-intrusive. It's back to like, if I write you, you don't feel like you have to write me back. Now, some people wanted
Right.
to write me back, and I get that. There were so many responses, Dawn, that I lost control of the whole project as just one girl over here trying to not screw up my kids. I lost control. But since they didn't feel like they had to respond, that made it even more powerful because it was just, something they could hold on to. But Dana told me after the fact that the reason that she opened up, so deeply about her grief is that because, here she is doing life with 4 daughters and a husband who have each suffered this horrific loss that I don't even want to think about, you know. So she said she would go into a room and everybody seemed okay. So she was like, if she wasn't okay, she wasn't going to bring the room down. And so she would write me. And she didn't even know who I was, but she would write me because I became her outlet.
Yeah.
And now she's become my outlet for sure in a lot of different ways because we still write each other. I wrote her this morning. So that's what you're saying about the letter writing. It creates this free space between two people where you can share. You don't have to share. You can say whatever you want. You can say nothing. And there's something so powerful about dropping it in the box, and you almost forget what even happened. You don't have a record of it anywhere. And so the person who's the most changed from letter writing or note writing or card writing or whatever context you put it into, we commonly think that, if I'm going to write you, Dawn, me saying something nice to you, you're going to be the person who's changed. But that's the misconception. The person who's the most changed from all of this is me,
Mhm.
because it opened up in something inside of me that I didn't know was there.
Mhm.
It,
Wow.
profoundly.
Yeah, it enriched your life just in incredible ways. And I think that's the power too of the gospel. Like when we serve, Jesus gave us that upside down kingdom. Like if you want to be great, be the least. If you want to live, die, surrender. If you want to have joy, then give, be generous. So you were all of those things, by the Spirit of God who gripped you. But I feel like, the Lord ushered you into a call that He had on your life, and that opened the gateway. You didn't have to be obedient. You didn't have to surrender to that nudge. What would you say to someone if they're feeling a tug on their heart about something, about being brave, about like taking a step, and you think, well, this sounds great. I feel like a creeper or a stalker.
Right. And I thought that's such a great question because I kept a journal the whole time I did the Facebook letters, and over and over again in the journal, it's just like, oh, I can't go on. I cannot write Miss Atwood from fourth day. That's nuts. And I know it. And I can't do one more letter. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. I'm putting myself out there. People are going to think it's dumb, like you said, that I'm a stalker, that I'm crazy, but just letting go and not letting that stop myself absolutely changed my life. And I'm not talking about I wrote a book and I give a speech and I get to be on podcast. That's not what I'm talking about. It changed my life. Like if I could be one person I wanted to be in my entire life, I would be the person that God let me be the 18 months I was writing letters. It was absolutely the best version of me that I will ever be. And all I had to do is let go and just like almost jump in the wave and see what happens. And I think the other thing we can do is we all have this voice in us telling us, and that's God, telling us what to do. And we all think it's crazy and it's all different. We don't have to have the same voice. Your voice can be totally different than my voice. But if we could just encourage each other to jump into the waves together and
Mm.
try something we don't know that we're good at, that we're pretty sure is ridiculous and mezzo and dumb in our own head, if we could just jump in and see what happens. It's almost like the act of dropping the letter in the mailbox because it's just taking a chance on the fact that maybe this world doesn't have it all figured out. And maybe what everyone's telling us, all the naysayers, and I'm not talking politically, I'm saying in our culture, are incorrect. And maybe we make the difference when we let go and do the stupidest thing we've ever done.
Yeah, I love it. And that's like why I've written my book, The Making of a BraveHearted Woman. It's like, why are we trying to live safe and small and shrink our dreams instead of expand our faith? Like, if we have that nudge from God, or we have that sense, if there's a dream in your heart, it's there for a reason. God
Right.
wants us to act on that and do something with it. And then you did do something more with this, because did you not write a book called Dear Friend, How to Reconnect in a Disconnected World through the
Yeah,
forgotten practice of handwriting?
Yeah, that's the speech. And then there's the book, Dear
Okay.
Dana. That time I
And-
went crazy and wrote all 580 of my
yes.
Facebook friends a letter. So it's become my life's mission. God's made it my life's mission. When I was just, like I said, minding my own business at DEFCON 5, not trying to, but it's all God. It's 1,000% God.
Yeah.
And the misconception would be to look at the story and think anything but God just set the world on fire. And I just got to be a part of it. And
Yeah.
to this day, and one of the most undersold parts of the story is, this would not have happened, first of all, if Dana wouldn't have written me back. because if at some point I would have stopped
Oh,
writing, because I'm just another girl, like I said, I'm just
yep.
another human being. So one, Dana writing me back, and two, the richest part of this whole story, beyond the 580 people and myself and our relationships through the letters, is that I have this friendship with Dana and her daughters that, their prayer support team, and that every day I'm in contact with one of them, they have a prayer request, and now they pray for me, these broken people that lost everything.
Mm.
I mean, that's the thing. God has turned this into something way bigger than a book, way bigger than a speech, way bigger than an interview or an appearance. It's a real life story of hope, and that things aren't going to work out the way we really want them to, but God's going to have people there for us. And
Yes.
that's such a story of hope to grab onto as well.
I love it because, and you say you're a spreader of hope, but hope really is the gift that keeps on giving. It's contagious. And thank you for doing that and sharing that. I see in pictures, and you can tell I'm a former pastor, but you let your life be interrupted by a call of God. You could have said no. I think of the Mother Mary that was getting ready to have a wedding, engaged to Joseph,
Right,
and
right.
she got interrupted. Like, her
Yeah.
plans got interrupted. She was minding her own business too.
Right,
And but
right.
but God said, "I want you to birth my son into the world." And in some ways, you partook in that same kind of a miracle where you birthed Jesus into the lives of so many people because you were willing to let your life be interrupted. And I just want to encourage anyone who's listening today that maybe your life is being interrupted. Maybe God's put a tap on your shoulder and you're dismissing it. You're like, "Oh, I'm not trying to hear that, God." But He
Right.
wants to use your life in amazing ways. And wouldn't you say that because you said yes to that, your life has just been blessed in an amazing and profound ways beyond what you could have even imagined? I don't think you saw this in your dreams.
No, God's plans were better than my prayers. I mean, it was beyond anything I could have imagined,
Yeah.
ever. And again, it's not about the books and the appearances. It's about the experience, the heart, and the way I honor it. Every day I still get up and write somebody a letter. Like, my gig now is, we're all on social media. If I see someone lost their mother, or I see someone won an award, or I see someone struggling, then I send that person a note. I have a little journal I keep on my desk where I write that stuff down, and I write a note, because the one thing it reminds me of, Dawn, is that every day it honors the story. It honors Dana. It honors Parker. It honors my 580 BFFs out there who I exchanged letters with, but most of all, it reminds me that in this crazy world, and we're going to DEFCON 1 and craziness again, that we can make a difference, that I can do something. It sets the tone of gratitude every single day. And God's allowed me that. And it's funny you talk about interrupting, because I'm a busy person like you are. Sometimes I sit down to write that letter. I'm like, gosh, I don't have time to do this. I mean, I have a lot going on here, and these people all want their stuff, but letting God interrupt me for that 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes, 66 cents, and you don't have to be a writer. I tell people this all the time. I almost wish I wasn't a writer and telling the story. And a human heart, that's all you need to write a letter or a note. That's all you need to get into this game.
And a
But
human
that,
heart.
but honoring that every morning is a
Mm.
reminder of so many things for me. It's like the reset button. But it does seem like an interruption, even as somebody who's crystal clear on the lessons. Like, how much clearer could God have been on the lesson for me? But I still sit down. I wrote somebody this morning whose husband has cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. As soon as I lick the stamp and put it on there, I don't lick it anymore. It's a sticker, obviously. But I was like, this is what I'm born to do.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Isn't that so amazing? And the reward is always on the other side of doing the thing. Do the thing, receive the reward. And so well done and keep going. I want to shift gears just for a second. Our time is almost up. I loved what you said a moment ago, and this isn't the gear that I want to shift, but I do want to rephrase it. God set the world on fire, and I got to be part of it. I love that. Like, I want to be part of the next brush fire of God. That's just such an exciting way to live your life. And I think it's amazing. But I want to ask you real quick about your other book that you've written. You Cannot Mess This Up. You are hilarious. And I don't know which came first. Was it the You Cannot Mess This Up first and then Dear Dana?
Right. That's the order. Yeah. That was my first book that I just written when I started, when I reconnected with Dana. I had
Dana,
just written that
okay.
book.
That's what I thought. And I'm just curious, if y'all aren't familiar with that, please Google it. The Audible is hilarious because you get to listen to you in your own voice talking about it. And you just been cracking me up. But I just love the whole premise of the story and going back in time, the whole thing, because I'm a kid of the 70s. So I was totally feeling the vibe. But how are you different today from when you wrote that book to where you are now? Big change?
Oh yeah, well that book was also a gift in a much different way. I mean, it wasn't as obvious, but I went into that book 100% because I'd been a freelance writer for a long time. I'd written about sports for a long time, and that was my big book idea. I was going to write myself back to my own childhood, and basically my whole intention was like, it's going to be hilarious, and I'm going to go back in time to my own childhood. But what I realized when I actually wrote it was that if you're going to write yourself back to your 10-year-old self and observe your parents at the same age as you and your bowl cut freaky deaky self, that oh my gosh feelings.com, you're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. So it turned out to be a catharsis. And people ask me about
Yes.
the first book all the time. They're like, so did you sit down with your psychologist before you wrote? I was like, no. It's kind of like Dear Dana. I had no intentions at all. I'm just rolling over here doing whatever I want to do. But it turned out that I went into that story, especially wanting to, like, when I wrote about little Amy, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to get away from her. That's how I wrote the story. And then by the time I finished the book, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be her, because I lived a lot of the things that were so wonderful about her, I
Mhm.
lived away. And so then you take that story and add the whole Dear Dana experience
Mm.
to it. These books have absolutely, God has transformed my life and then allowed me to share that with other people. And the gift, I'll tell you what, Dawn, God has just absolutely, rocked it out for me, like hit it out of the park.
Yeah. Well, I'm so proud of you. I'm just meeting you. And yet at the same time, I hear your heart. I've written a book about my childhood abuse and how I've interpreted it now and what was then and how I was able to embrace the young me that I rejected for so long until I was able to have enough love for myself to reinterpret my past and recognize, so I kind of feel you a little bit there and all that that book did for you. And I can imagine the transformation that has taken place in your life because what I can see is how you radiate the presence of God. Thank you so much for what you do. I don't say that to a lot of my guests, honest. I mean, I loved what I do, but I love your passion because it's really coming through. And I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity to connect. Final words for any woman listening. So, our audience, we're brave-hearted women. Come on, women. We are reinventing our lives, but many of them find themselves stuck and afraid and not ready to be transformed, but they so long for it. What would you say to my listener?
Well, I think it's back to what we said earlier, is that one small voice, that voice of God in your head and your heart, is there for a reason. And I would not only consider jumping into the waves as soon as you can, surround yourself with people that are going to demand that you jump in the waves. And if you want to, and I'm not trying to sell anything here, go to amydaughters.com, email me. I will be in your corner with you when you want to jump in the waves. I will be there. Surround yourself with people who want to encourage you to be brave, and realize that bravery is not defined the same by all of us. The courage that it takes,
Right.
each of us have something, a different hurdle to get over. But let's surround ourselves with other women that are going to be like, let's go. And I encourage you today to really, pray about jumping in the waves, just to have the courage that it's in there somewhere to do that. Because if it's there for me, it's there for everybody else.
Yes. My guest today, Amy Daughters, and her book, Dear Dana. And also, You Can't Mess This Up. You've got to get a hold of those books. I'm sure they can find you on Amazon and all the usual suspects.
Yes, ma'am, for
All
sure.
right. Thank you once again so much for being with us. And hey, this is Dawn Damon, BraveHeart Mentor. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to leave you, dear women, like I always do. Is this your moment to find your brave and live your vision?